April 5th.
You must be very careful, Margaret. It's the girl.
Witness the birth.
Bad things will start to happen. Evil things.
Of evil.
It's all for you. No, don't.
The first omen.
I believe the girl is to be the mother.
Mother of what?
Is the most terrifying.
666 is the mark of the devil.
Movie of the year.
It's not real. It's not real. What's not real? Who said that?
The first omen. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. Only in theaters April 5th.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Ray Owens became a suspect in this case out of necessity. Detectives believe that Jake Silva killed Renee, and in order for Jake to be guilty, Ray must have been involved in some way too. Because Ray told investigators the same thing Jake said, that they had left Renee at Labor Ready on Monday morning and never saw her again. Detectives believe that Jake was lying about this, which means that Ray is lying too. And why would Ray lie about this, unless he was involved as well? Who was Ray?
He was older than all of us. I do remember him being old enough to buy beer. I just remember he was like this cool hippie guy, had a beard, like a hobo, but not like in a dirty, creepy, weirdo way. He was the cool guy.
That's Amy, Fuji's next door neighbor. Amy hadn't known Ray for long. In fact, Ray was only ever in Manteca for about 6 weeks total. But Amy got to know him because while he was in town, Ray spent much of his time crashing on Fuji's couch.
Kind of guy who'd have a hacky sack.
Yeah, actually, yes, we used to play hacky sack all the time. He actually taught me how to play hacky sack. I dug Ray. Me and him became pretty good friends.
Then, one day, Ray was gone. 4 days after Renee's body was found, he packed his things and left.
Last time I saw him was when Ray was packing his bag, and I was asking him what he was up to or where he was going, and he said he was going home. I don't know what that means, but I gave him a hug and said it was really cool to meet him, and hopefully we'll touch base again, and that was that.
Amy found Ray's abrupt departure so soon after Renee's murder to be suspicious. Though Amy told us, Ray himself had never seemed suspicious. In her eyes, he made for an unlikely murderer.
Ray was just so chill. If you were to know Jake and know Ray, you would have absolutely said Jake did something way more before Ray. I mean, because Ray was just like a big couch potato, so. But yeah, super cool dude. Don't ever know what happened to him, but yeah. Which makes me think that he was there when it happened or whatever. I don't know.
I'm Susan Simpson.
And I'm Jacinda Davis.
I'm an attorney and investigator.
And I'm a true crime TV producer.
And this is Proof, Season 2, Murder at the Warehouse. Proof is a Red Marble Media production in association with Glassbox Media.
New episodes are released on Mondays, and on Thursdays you can catch our sidebar episodes where we talk about the case, talk to guests, and tell you more about what's going on behind the scenes. You can find additional materials about this case on our website at proofcrimepod.com.
This is episode 11, Striking Out.
Ray Owens arrived in Manteca in April of 2000. Jake Silva and his best friend Robbie Mendoza happened to be skating by when Ray stepped off the bus.
He showed up in Manteca out of nowhere on a Greyhound bus. Big old beard, fucking like hippie style with a skateboard. As soon as I seen that skateboard, it was over with. Right away, we started hanging out, we started skating. He had that old school style that I like.
Before coming out to California, Ray Owens had been working at a coffee shop in Florida. One day, he decided it was time for a change. So he quit his job and used his last paycheck to buy a bus ticket to Manteca. Ray grew up in Indiana, and his parents still lived out there. But his older sister now lived in Manteca. That's how Ray ended up there, too. The idea had been for him to stay with her for a bit, start a new life out in sunny California, maybe, if things worked out for him there. Things had not worked out for him, though. Ray couldn't find a steady job and mostly ended up working at Labor Ready from time to time to get by. He didn't really have housing either, because he and his sister weren't getting along. When interrogated by Detectives Souza and Wells, Ray described her as yuppie-ish, as if that word alone was all the explanation needed to understand why he decided to live on the streets instead with Jake and his skater friends. Ray told detectives he decided to leave Manteca even before Renee went missing. He'd realized there was nothing for him out there, and besides, he was getting tired of sleeping on Fuji's couch every night. So, 4 days after Renee's body was found, Ray caught a bus back to Indiana and moved back in with his parents. In September of 2000, after talking to Josh Burrows, Detectives Souza and Wells flew to Indiana with an arrest warrant. They took Ray back to California with them, where he was held at the county jail awaiting trial. For Ray, that trial never happened. 6 months later, prosecutor Charles Schultz dismissed all charges against him, though he never explained why.
Ray is a major figure in this case. If the state's theory is correct, he raped and murdered a teenage girl and got away with it. And if the state's theory is not correct, then he's Jake's alibi. Ray backs up Jake's story. So we needed to talk to him if at all possible. We thought our best chance of having an actual conversation with him would be to go and try to talk to him in person. So on one trip out west, Jacinda and I made a quick detour on our way back home.
All right, so we are back in the cold again.
I did not expect it to be. What is it, wind and ice warning?
Yes. I packed for Arizona, not Indianapolis. But I was doing some research about the medical examiner in this case, Dr. John Cooper. He also testified a couple years later as an expert for the defense in a case where the woman was accused of murdering her husband. He had 27 stab wounds, but Dr. Cooper testified that actually he died of a heart attack.
I mean, he maybe had a heart attack when his wife started stabbing him. Okay, we should not be laughing.
He didn't die of the stab wounds, he died with stab wounds.
At Jake's and Ty's trials, Dr. Cooper testified that Renee was about 2 months pregnant, which corroborated Josh Burrows, who told detectives that Renee had gone out to the Home Depot because a party was being thrown there to celebrate her pregnancy. But Dr. Cooper's own reports showed that wasn't true. He found no evidence of fetal tissue. So why had he testified otherwise? On the flight out to Indiana, Susan had looked up some of the other murder cases where Dr. Cooper had testified and realized that Renee's case was not the only time his medical judgment had been questionable.
I found several cases where you can tell that everyone, like all the attorneys and the judge know that this guy's got some big problems, but they make like kind of allusions to it and don't go into the details, which definitely explains why the autopsy report can be just blatantly wrong.
As we drove through cornfields on our way to hopefully meet with Ray Owens, Susan and I killed time by Googling Dr. Cooper's record and found some odd testimony in other murder cases. Like the time he claimed a hotel maid must have stolen his records, and that's why he was unable to turn them over. Or the time he testified he left his autopsy notes at home, despite testifying earlier that he hadn't taken any notes at all.
Cooper's conduct was sufficiently irregular and suggestive of evasion and dishonesty as to bear on his credibility. This is the judge's appellate decision. During his cross-examination of Cooper, the prosecutor asked Dr. Cooper whether he was aware that his opinions had been criticized by forensic pathologists interviewed on television.
We had wondered how Dr. Cooper could have gotten the autopsy so wrong in this case, but his record hints at a possible answer. Dr. Cooper did not respond to our request to speak to him. So the following quote from a newspaper article about his testimony in another murder case may be the closest thing to an answer that we'll get.
Our theory on him is that he'll say whatever you pay him to say, the prosecutor said. This newspaper found additional questions in Dr. Cooper's background that weren't introduced at the trial. Dr. Cooper has been repeatedly criticized by judges and peers and hasn't had a license to practice medicine since late 2003.
Ray Owens wasn't home the first time we knocked on his door, and since we had no other witnesses in the area we needed to speak to, that didn't leave us with much to do, except to sit and wait.
All right.
I know.
I've never actually done a stakeout before. Just never had the need for it.
This is not a good stakeout car, though. Like, I'm really
Nothing about this is good
frustrated
for
about this
stakeout.
car.
You can't charge your phones.
Somehow I've imported all of my contacts.
We hunkered down and waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, we decided it was time to give up and try again later.
How long
Process.
did you manage?
Like an hour.
Oh, God. So late. It felt like 3. Wow, we suck. We're coming back.
We're just regrouping. We ran out of snacks and we're hungry.
We went back later that evening to try again. But it turns out, stakeouts are even more boring at night.
At least we have seat warmers.
Yeah, as long as I'm not giving up already.
We might have to abandon our stakeout so I can use them back.
We are like 90 seconds into a stakeout.
Susan fell asleep like 15 minutes later, leaving me alone to keep an eye out for Ray. I'll post pictures online. But after a while, when he didn't show, I woke her up and told her we'd have to try again in the morning.
All right, stakeout, day 2. This time we are much better provisioned, but we have charged batteries, we have water, we have coffee, we have snacks, we have a whole giant plate of Indian food. Less than an hour in, Jacinda was already ready to give up.
Maybe we should go get donuts for our stakeout. Does that be like a local donut shop, right? Oh my God.
That's him.
Fuck. That's him.
That's totally him, isn't it?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Get ready.
Excuse me. Hi, are you Ray? Our conversation with Ray was very brief. I had just enough time to say something like, we're out here looking into an old case and then Ray interrupted me. I don't have anything to say about anything from my past, he told us. And then he turned and all but ran inside, shutting the door behind him.
We called Kevin and told him we'd managed to speak to Ray Owens for all of 3 seconds.
I can't believe he just walked away from. I can believe he just walked away from you.
And it was a weird walkway. I mean, we have people who say, no, I don't want to talk. But they say it like...
He was scared.
He was scared. Like, he literally, like, turned his back and, like...
He didn't want to know who we are.
Yeah, that's weird because you always want to know who the person is so you know what it's about.
But, like, again, there's 2 options here. One, the one that I think a lot of listeners would jump to, probably unfairly, is that, he had something to do with it. The other is this massively traumatized him. He just wants to pretend it never happened in his life, and he just cannot cope.
Like he's basically been on the run mentally since whatever happened with his crimes.
Exactly. We wrote a letter to Ray so that we could at least explain who we were and what we wanted to talk to him about, but we never heard from him. In the end, the only thing Susan and I learned from our trip to Indiana is that we're never doing a stakeout again. Can I just go on the record and say that Susan is the worst stakeout partner?
Can I just say that Jacinda is the worst stakeout partner in history?
Well, I don't think either one of you is going to be confused with like Starsky and Hutch. But I mean, I was getting picture updates last night, Susan, and you were like asleep. I suggested to Jacinda that she draw a beard on your face at one point.
It was a long day.
We were disappointed that we weren't able to speak to Ray. But at the same time, I get it. Or at least I think I do, maybe. When Ray was in his early 20s, he spent 6 months in jail facing a murder charge and the possibility of life in prison. But unlike Jake and Ty, Ray was released. He was able to put all of that behind him, to go back home and rebuild a normal life for himself. Almost like this had all just been a terrible, terrible dream. I can understand why Ray Owens might not ever want to think about this case ever again. I told Jake what had happened on our trip out to see Ray. He'd been somewhat less understanding.
He just doesn't care. I can understand he's traumatized by it. I understand. Trust me, I know. But hey man, there's still somebody in prison, been in there for almost going on 24 fucking years for nothing. Can you at least, tell us what we need to know? I mean, goddamn, how heartless can you be?
I'm not sure how much he could really tell us anyway.
He knew damn well there was no party. He knew damn well Renee was nowhere around that whole week. He knows the truth. And he was with me 24/7. He knew he was there. And the motherfuckers refusing to help us.
Wyndham Hotels and Resorts makes travel possible for all. Whether it's the long haulers looking for a great cup of coffee, a roomier rest for the on-a-whim road trippers, or a place to make summer memories with the whole family. No matter who you are, where you're going, or why, with 24 trusted brands to choose from like La Quinta, Days Inn, and Super 8, your Wyndham is waiting. Get the lowest price at wyndhamhotels.com. Restrictions apply. Visit website for more details.
When we made our McDonald's Spicy Chicken McNuggets, you were praise hands emoji. Then we ran out, and you were streaming tears emoji. Now they're back, so you can be grinning face with sweat emoji. Order ahead on the McDonald's app.
And get Money Mouth face emoji with 2 orders of crispy, irresistible 10-piece McNuggets, spicy or classic, for just $6. Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Single item at regular price.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
No matter how far you run from them, childhood tragedies have a way of catching back up with you. So is true of elite scuba diver Veronica West, who's about to encounter something unexplainable at the bottom of the ocean, something that will draw her back to her home on Sinclair Island, Maine. There, she'll lead a dangerous rescue mission to the bottom of the Bay of Fundy, home of the world's largest tides, and something horrific down in the depths. Listen to Narcosis, the latest horror fiction show on Realm's premier horror channel, Undertow. Narcosis is available now. Search for Undertow or Narcosis wherever podcasts are served.
After Indiana, it was time for us to go home, regroup, and plan our next trip out to California. It was early one morning after we got back that Jacinda called me. She told me she had an update. No, I'm recording now. What's going on?
Okay, so I just got to the office, and there are 2 letters here from Jared Conway.
Oh.
So I haven't even opened them yet.
Jared Conway is the serial sex offender that someone had anonymously accused online of killing Renee. We'd written to him a few months earlier and asked if we could talk to him, but we hadn't heard back. Until now.
Dated 7/31. Okay. Dear Miss Davis, I have tried to call your cell phone number 3 times on the 28th, 29th, 30th at about 9 o'clock. I have not gotten any answer, and I cannot leave you a voicemail. If you can write me and let me know when to call you, maybe you can let me know some of the things you wish to discuss in your letter.
Damn it, did you have missed calls, or?
No.
So Jared Conway had tried to call Jacinda. Well, maybe. As you might imagine, Jacinda gets a lot of calls. And there were missed calls from possible numbers that we couldn't say weren't him, but none of the dates and times he'd said in his letter.
All right, 8-2. Hello, Miss Davis. I got your letter today. I'm sending you the visiting form. I tried your cell phone again today. There was no answer. But write me and give me a specific time, or you can ask me some questions in your letter. Shit. So, all right, so my fear that he decided not to talk to us is not true.
Yeah, can't believe he was trying to call. Shit. Jared Conway sent Jacinda visiting forms for her to fill out, but he'd filled out his portion of it incorrectly. California prisons require these visiting forms to be prepared a certain way to be valid, and Conway hadn't done that. Jacinda let Conway know about the mix-up, but he never sent the corrected forms. We need to talk to him, that's all. You have to wait till he calls back.
It's just so frustrating.
After that, Jacinda kept her phone with her, like she was a presidential aide carrying the nuclear football. But no calls from Jared Conway came in. Not then, anyway.
When no call from Jared Conway came in, I did write back to him, like he'd suggested, because we had a lot of questions for him. And not just about Renee. There was another murder we wanted to know more about. The female victim he'd confessed to killing in Tennessee. And though we didn't know who she was or where she'd been killed, from what we could tell, Conway was never prosecuted for it.
So why did the prosecutor say in court for sentencing here in Stanislaus County, Modesto, that he confessed to a murder in Tennessee?
It could be that the Tennessee authorities were like, you guys got him in California, we're gonna not press charges.
Like, the murder of a girl, you're just like, we don't need to solve that one. Let's leave it open on the books because he's going to jail. Nah, they would have done something, right?
Not necessarily. I've run into other cases like that.
Or they're just like, we don't need to worry about this. Let's leave it technically unsolved.
We had no idea who the victim in Tennessee had been. Her name was listed nowhere. And maybe it's because she didn't actually exist. Maybe the reason Jared Conway's confession had seemingly been ignored was because he hadn't actually killed anyone at all.
Maybe they couldn't corroborate it.
That's the only other thing I can think of, but it'd be good to know.
We waited to hear back from Jared Conway, but before we heard from him, it was time for us to head back to California.
So we just landed this afternoon after a few different delays and dramas, and it's still daylight in California, so we're actually going straight back on the investigative trail.
Yeah, we have 3-4 hours that we can keep trying to talk to people before we have to call it a day.
But the one we're going to now is the one I'm most interested in talking to. It's Jeremy Ward, who is only a brief footnote in the file, really. He didn't testify. He only had one interview, I believe.
One that we know of.
Yeah, but there's no record of them trying to contact him again. Jeremy Ward's role in this case has bothered me ever since we saw the police report about his one brief interview. On the Monday morning when Renee went to labor ready, Jeremy Ward had been there too, waiting for a job. So he was one of the last people to see her alive at labor ready. But he also claimed to be the very last person known to have seen Renee alive, when he told police that he saw her again 3 or 4 days later, and gave her and Jake a ride in his car. So he comes forward on the 6th, the day after she's found. He walks in and says, I have information on this case. He says, I saw Jake Silva and Renee Ramos, and I gave them a ride in my car. But he says that while they're in the car, they talked to him about the job they just finished up at Labor Ready, cleaning up dust at some construction site. Which just isn't true, because Jake and Renee never worked at Labor Ready. No one else claims to have talked to her or engaged in any kind of conversation with her. This guy, Jeremy Ward's the only one who says, yeah, I saw her after the 29th and I talked to her
interacted with her.
In his car.
And they're talking about this job they just finished cleaning up a construction site. And that's bonkers. We know it's not true.
There were a lot of people in this case who thought they might have seen Renee after Memorial Day, when really they had their dates confused and they'd seen her before that day. It's hard to see how Jeremy Ward, though, could have made that mistake. We know for a fact that Jeremy Ward saw Renee on Memorial Day because he was there at Labor Ready. And he says that the second time he saw her and gave her and Jake a ride was several days after that, on Thursday or Friday, just a few days before she was found.
And if it was just that alone, to me, is a big red flag. And I have lots of questions.
Yeah, we also, though, keep in mind in this case, there are a lot of young people who like to make up stories and lie and say whatever the fuck for who knows why. Like, he could just be coming up with some story no different than Josh Burrows or, any of the other kids.
I got alarms going off back of my head.
I agree. It's odd. It's peculiar.
Our attempts to find Jeremy Ward all failed. He'd moved recently, and we didn't know where he'd gone. At the end of our trip, we told Kevin we were no closer to finding him than we had been when we started.
And still no one knows Jeremy Ward.
That's the guy you tried to see on the way in.
Yeah, we just can't find him.
So is Jeremy Ward somehow connected to any of this? I mean, I don't have any evidence of that because he's not connected to anyone. He's just like the most random figure.
Jeremy Ward is the kid that nobody knows.
In a town where it often seems like everybody knows everyone, somehow nobody knows Jeremy Ward. Because of that, Jacinda and I started referring to him, jokingly, as the ghost of Mantika. We even checked with people who were in his high school class, and none of them recalled him either. They checked their yearbooks and found his class photo there, so it was real. He did go to school with them. And yet, to date, we've only spoken to one person who told us they knew Jeremy Ward. And trust me, we've asked a lot of people. That one person was Jeremy Ward's mother. Because we'd tried everything we could think of to make contact with Jeremy himself, and we never got through. We thought he likely knew we were trying to talk to him, but we weren't even sure about that. So we knocked on his mom's door and hand-delivered a letter to her, addressed to Jeremy, explaining who we were and why we wanted to talk to him. His mom promised us she'd make sure the letter got to him. He never called, though. Sometimes in investigations, you hit dead ends. For us, this is one of those dead ends. Jeremy Ward told police a factually inaccurate story about seeing Renee and Jake together just a few days before her body was found at Home Depot. What Jeremy Ward said helped mislead investigators at a critical point in the case, making them think that Renee's disappearance must have taken place much later than the other evidence suggests. So why? Why did Jeremy tell police he gave Renee and Jake a ride in his car on Thursday or Friday? And that Jake and Renee had just been working for Labor Ready at a dusty construction site? When we know that can't possibly be true. These are questions that deserve an answer. But at least so far, we failed to find one.
Jeremy Ward is not the only dead end we've hit in this case. When you're reinvestigating a murder that happened decades ago, getting people to talk is always a challenge. But in this case, it's been more of a challenge than usual. One thing we hadn't expected was just how angry some people would become once we mentioned Renee's name. As we explained to Kevin, a lot of people we wanted to talk to shut us down the moment they found out why we wanted to talk to them.
We also spoke to Richard Bowling, the man who found Renee's body at the Home Depot. He called me back, started off friendly till I told him I wanted to talk to him, and he turned hostile real quick. Super hostile.
Really? Why?
Don't know.
And he said that he'd been called before, it traumatized him, he lost his job because of it, it was really hard for him, he doesn't want people calling him anymore, and he
doesn't want to talk about it,
and he
sick
hung
of talking
up.
about it.
Why would he lose his job over finding this body?
Well, I asked that and he hung up on me, so...
Getting people to talk to us wasn't our only challenge. Sometimes the problem was just figuring out who it was we needed to talk to, especially when it came to following up on tips people had called in back at the beginning. For instance, if you recall from last week's episode, there was one tip that came in from a woman named Jenny, who had information about Tim Fisher. But police didn't record her last name on the tip sheet. There are lots of Jennys out there, so how were we ever supposed to find the one that called this tip in? And then there's Quincy. 2 different people called in tips about him, and both said that on different occasions, Quincy confessed to Renee's murder. The first tip said a guy named Alan, who worked at Strings, a local restaurant and bar, had been at the 133 Club one night when a guy who worked at the Indy's car wash came in. Alan thought the man's name was Quincy, maybe, or possibly William. He started talking about how he'd killed the girl and how police were going to find his fingerprints and catch him. The second tip was from a guy named Howland. No other name listed. Howland had been at Bucktooth Billiards when a white man with brown hair in his 20s or 30s came in and started drunkenly talking about how they were going to send him to jail for murder on 4 strikes. The man's name, Howland said, was possibly Quincy.
Police never followed up on either tip, but you may have guessed why these tips in particular have caught our interest. Because this Quincy guy sounds a lot like Conway, Jared Conway, the serial sex offender we were looking into. White guy, brown hair, 30 years old, may have worked at the Indy's car wash, his brother owned it, he lived nearby, and, like Quincy apparently, Jared Conway would have reason to be concerned about California's 3 strikes law, because Conway already had 2 strikes against him for 2 prior sexually based offenses. Could Quincy and Conway be the same person? An intriguing idea, but we had no real way of following up on these tips. We also gotta figure out who the hell Quincy is.
We should just ask people, like if it's a nickname. I mean, not just random people, but...
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me, do you know Quincy from 23 years ago?
Quincy, anyone? Quincy? Another tip we were interested in was from a security guard named Dale Franklin, who'd been working at the motel across the street from the Home Depot. According to the tip sheet, Mr. Franklin had been working there on Friday, June 2nd. And a little after midnight, he'd heard some disturbing sounds coming from the direction of the Home Depot. At trial, Detective Tony Souza was asked about this tip, because according to the tip sheet, the lead had been assigned to him to follow up on. But Detective Souza confirmed he never did follow up on it. It took us a while to find the right Mr. Franklin. I called all the Dale Franklins in California I could, there were a lot, and asked if, in the year 2000, they'd ever worked as a security guard. They all told me no, until one finally didn't.
I was working at the motel there in Manteca, Best Western. I was working security.
I asked Franklin if he remembered reporting to the police that he'd heard something in connection with the crime that had happened at the Home Depot. Yes, he told me.
I remember that night that you're talking about, because I kept hearing that, and it haunted me for the longest time after that. I knew I heard like somebody hollering for help. It was coming from across the street. It was just so faint, but I knew something. It was like somebody was in trouble. It just didn't sound right.
Franklin had not been able to hear anything distinctly, just the distant sound of a person yelling, coming from the direction of the Home Depot. Franklin couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman, though. It just sounded wrong to him.
That sound to it sent chills down my backbone when I heard it. That's why I reported it. I went inside the motel and I told the lady that was working there behind the counter and something was going on over there, called the Mantika police, and they responded to it immediately. I remember that.
That night?
But I don't, yeah. Oh, yeah, they were on top of it pretty quick.
Before police arrived, though, one more thing caught Franklin's attention.
The But then I remember hearing this loud engine with loud pipes. That car, that Blazer came out of there. Yeah, I just remember that car had loud pipes on it.
According to the tip sheet, Franklin had told police back then that he'd seen a tan and green Chevy Blazer on Yosemite in front of the Home Depot. The driver was a white male in a red shirt. So after you called the police, do you think they came out that night?
Oh yeah. I remember seeing they had their little spotlights on their cars and stuff. And
Franklin says he saw patrol cars out in the field where the Home Depot was. He assumed they searched the area and took care of whatever it was that was going on over there. But the following week, when he went into his company's main office in Turlock, the receptionist gave him some surprising news.
And I remember coming in that morning, and when they told me that they had found a body over by Home Depot, it was just a strange feeling for me.
Did you think to yourself, I heard that happen?
Yeah. In fact, I thought, but then I also thought, why did it take them so long to find a body?
Franklin's immediate thought was that the chilling screams he'd heard from the direction of the Home Depot had been the sound of someone being murdered. But he was confused, too. He'd called the police about it on Friday evening, and the police had gone out there to check. So why was the body not found until several days later? Franklin hadn't known until I told him that the victim had been hidden under some debris inside the Home Depot. Well, that explains why they didn't find her on Friday, he told me.
Franklin didn't know anything more about the Home Depot, but Susan did have one last question for him. Because according to the prosecution, Josh Burrows had been partying over at the Best Western, where Dale Franklin worked, before he headed over to the Home Depot party, where Renee was killed.
Do you remember if the Best Western ever had an issue with teenagers partying there?
Yes. Yeah. That's one reason why they had security there. The police spent more time coming into that motel because the kids rent motel rooms to party and stuff.
So maybe part of Josh Burrows' story really is true? Maybe he really had been at a hotel party at the Best Western sometime around when Renee was killed? But that's pretty much the only thing Josh has said that we've been able to corroborate. Even after speaking to all of the teenagers he identified by name as being present at the Home Depot party. Josh Burrows told detectives that a bunch of girls had been at the Home Depot party. Some of them had been Renee's friends, but a couple had been girls that he had known.
A person who you believe is Jamie Nichols, and another girl who's a white female about 15, and she's a little heavy, shows up, right? Okay. And everybody keeps drinking, right? Yeah.
Quick note. Jamie Nichols is not the Jamie from the sister story, the younger sister that lived over at the house on Pestana Avenue. This is a different Jamie, who was friends with the skater group that Jake and Renee hung out with. And by the way, we apologize for all the J names in this case. We know it's confusing. Sorry about that. It's beyond our control. Anyway, according to Josh, Jamie Nichols was there watching when Renee was raped and killed.
When it seemed apparent that Renee was dead, who was there in the building?
A couple people. That girl started to use Jamie.
You think she was still there?
Yes.
Josh said Jamie had been at the party with her friend, who detectives identified from Josh's description as a girl named Tanya Molden. The detectives were extremely interested in both girls, Jamie especially. They quizzed Josh Burrows about Jamie in detail and made comments in recorded interviews that make it clear they were taking note of her comings and goings and whose houses she'd been at. When Susan spoke to Jamie, she asked if Jamie knew how she'd gotten mixed up in this case.
Because I knew Josh Burrows, and I was told that he said I was there. And I was like, I would remember going to a warehouse party, you know? like I'd remember that.
Who told you that Josh said you were there?
The detective, actually, that came and spoke with me.
Jamie told the detectives, and also testified at trial, that she had not been at the Home Depot.
But no, I never even heard about it. And if I recall, I never even heard about like a Home Depot party. Like I do not remember that at all. If I was to witness something like that, I would call the police. I would go and run. I would be like, what the hell? Like, what is happening in front of me?
What did you think when you heard that you were accused of being at the party?
It hurt because it was like, why am I being brought up? Like that's something that I would remember that. Like that's a very poignant time in my childhood, you know, like I would remember that going down.
Have you ever wondered if the party really happened?
I have thought of that actually. I have actually thought of that, and I'm not entirely sure if it did or not. Because and then like afterwards, no one really talked about it. That was the thing too. No one brought it up. Like no one talked about the party.
Why do you think Josh accused you?
Well, we dated a little bit. Like we were official for like maybe. Gosh, that's so crazy to bring those memories up. And I broke up with him. Like I was just like, oh, I can't do this, and like this isn't a relationship I want to be in, and I don't know, maybe I don't know, to be honest, but like you know how people when they get after breakups, so it's just like they'll say whatever and do anything, but that's like a huge accusation. That's like nothing you play around with. You don't throw that card around, you know. And
what was Josh like?
He was kind, you know. I know his home life wasn't the greatest. I think we only dated for like a week. Yeah, he was always nice to me, but I think it was just one of those things for me where it was like, oh, let's date, you know, and then I was like, oh, wait, no.
Jamie and Josh Burrows didn't date for long, and they hadn't ended on a bad note or anything like that. They were 14 and 15 years old, and it wasn't anything serious. What Jamie remembers most about Josh and their brief relationship was how he would confide in her about how sad and lonely he was, and how she would give him a sympathetic ear and a shoulder to cry on. But teenage breakups can be weird. Who knows? Maybe Josh Burrows harbored some kind of secret anger at Jamie and accused her of witnessing Renee's murder to get back at her for the breakup. But here's what's weird about that. It's not Josh Burrows who starts talking about Jamie. It's the detectives who first bring up her name, and who months later on are still asking Josh about her.
I know the detectives were very interested in you.
Yeah.
They were asking about you a lot.
That's weird.
It is. They were very focused on you, and I've been wondering why.
Yeah, I don't know either.
The same thing goes for Jamie's friend Tanya Malden. Josh described a girl being at the party with Jamie, but Josh didn't know her name. It's detectives who identified her as Tanya. But like Jamie, every time they talked to Tanya, she denied being at the Home Depot party. And although both girls knew Jake and Renee, they weren't really friends, just more teenagers they knew and ran around with sometimes. So what's going on here? Why were detectives so focused on these two girls? Well, I have a theory, maybe. Because when Tanya and Jamie were first interviewed by detectives, long before Josh Burrows claimed they were at the Home Depot party, both girls said that on Memorial Day, they'd been walking by Labor Ready when they'd seen Renee inside, standing at the counter, a little before 6 p.m. Yeah, they didn't see her Monday morning, when we know Renee was there. They said they saw her there Monday afternoon. Here's Kevin reading the report of the interviews with Tanya.
Tanya knew Renee Ramos casually and recalled last seeing Renee at Labor Ready. Tanya was walking by Labor Ready with Jamie Nichols and saw Renee Ramos inside Labor Ready and standing at the counter. Tanya believed it Memorial Day and at 5:30 p.m.
This is not something that anyone else told the police about, but it makes sense in a way. Because if Renee was still alive that afternoon and looking for Jake, then the Labor Ready is probably where she would have gone. That's where Renee was supposed to meet Jake, around 3:30 or 4, once she got done working for the day. Jake had been waiting for her there that afternoon, but he'd given up waiting around 5 p.m. or so. And Jamie and Tanya said they saw Renee there about a half hour later. I asked Jamie about this. Both you and Tanya tell police this early on. You say that you were walking by the Labor Ready and you saw her inside the building.
Oh, and that's like that work program, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
day labor place. But I'm curious if you recall it now. It sounds like you don't.
No, but I know exactly where you're talking about now. I don't recall it now.
That's the last confirmed sighting. And you and Tanya both tell the police that you saw her at the counter.
I remember the big wide open windows, and Tanya lived right around the corner, pretty much.
No, it makes sense that you'd be there.
Yeah.
Jamie does not recall seeing Renee now. But back then, in 2000, she and Tanya both said the same thing. They saw Renee there. And a little while after that, they'd ended up hanging out with a large group of teenagers who were all skating late into the night. Jake and Ray were there too, but Renee was not. So Tanya and Jamie were both strong evidence that Jake and Renee were not together as of Monday afternoon, which means Tanya and Jamie both support Jake's story. Could this be why detectives concluded that Tanya and Jamie must have been at the Home Depot party? To explain why they were lying about seeing Renee in the afternoon? Maybe. Because Tanya and Jamie's statements were inconvenient for the detective's theory, and it's a lot easier to explain away what they said if you believe they were just trying to cover up the fact that they had witnessed Renee's murder. Sometimes, even when you find the witness you were looking for, you still don't get the answers you were hoping to get. Jamie and Tanya may have once known something important about this case, except no one thought it was a big deal at the time. Jamie and Tanya don't seem to have been questioned about it in detail, and now they don't remember it at all. Sometimes, though, you get lucky. Sometimes you find a witness who knew a potentially crucial detail, and they still remember everything about it, even 23 years later.
And Susan and I were about to meet one of those witnesses, someone whose memory from 23 years ago was as clear today as it was then.
That was a surprisingly important and difficult interview. How are you feeling, Jacinda?
Feeling a little like, oh shit. I don't know what it all means, but oh shit.
I mean, it's just one guy in one statement, but after talking to him, that guy knows what he's talking about. And that means we've got to kind of rethink everything about how we've been assuming this happened.
That changes everything.
Spring? Is that you? Warmer temps mean new Allbirds styles. Meet the Superlight Collection, the lightest ever shoes from Allbirds, now in fresh colors. These must-have travel shoes have a lighter-than-air feel and a barely-there fit that made them the most packable shoes ever. Plus, they're comfy right out of the box. That means more comfort and less baggage. Experience how Allbirds is redefining comfort. Visit allbirds.com and use code SUPER24 for a free pair of socks with a purchase of $48 or more. That's ALLBIRDS.com, code SUPER24.
You've worked hard for what you have. Your money, your assets, your 401k, and home. Isn't it all worth protecting? Nearly 1 in 4 consumers have been a victim of identity theft. LifeLock Ultimate Plus helps protect your finances with up to $3 million in reimbursement. LifeLock alerts you to identity threats you might miss. And if your identity is stolen, your dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. Let LifeLock help protect what you've worked so hard for. Save 25% off your first year on LifeLock Ultimate Plus at LifeLock.com/aware. Terms apply.
Kickoff for Super Bowl 34.
The Titans-Rams 2000 Super Bowl, an instant classic. Hours after the game, 2 men were stabbed in the street, accused of being in the middle, the greatest linebacker in NFL history.
Ray Lewis and 2 friends are charged with murder.
The nation's eyes were glued to their televisions. The trial concluded, and the verdicts came back. Not guilty.
What you can learn from all this is that big cases make for big mistakes. Look what happened in O.J. Simpson, and look what happened in Ray Lewis.
Lewis went on to have a Hall of Fame career, but questions around that night in Atlanta still remain.
So what do you think they're hiding? They know what happened. They know exactly what happened.
After 20 years, it's time to get to the bottom line truth. From Tenderfoot TV, I'm Tim Livingston, and this is The Raven. Listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. For ad-free listening and early access, subscribe to Tenderfoot Plus on tenderfootplus.com.
Susan and I were sitting in the parking lot of a construction site near Stockton, where we just finished speaking to a man that we're going to call the plumber.
He was a Home Depot worker. He was there on the day she was found. And the reason I was so interested to speak to him out of all the Home Depot workers is this one line from the report.
We had wanted to speak to the plumber, but the plumber had not wanted to speak to us. He could tell from our questions that we did not necessarily accept what the police had concluded in this case, and he was upset about that. The plumber wasn't quite yelling at us, but he was just a few decibels shy of that, and he made no attempt to conceal his anger.
I'm so glad he spoke to us, but you could tell, well, he told us that he didn't want to talk to us.
Yeah, he feels in his heart they got the right person. The plumber kept talking to us, though, and we told him that we were there to talk to him after seeing a brief note in the case file about what he told investigators back in 2000.
The worker stated that he thought the pile of insulation had moved approximately 4 feet between Friday and where the pile was located on Monday. He bases his opinion because the pile of insulation was no longer directly under the pipes he had been working on.
If what the plumber said was true, then Renee had not been at the Home Depot until sometime after the end of the workday on Friday afternoon. We'd wanted to know if the plumber's memory today was the same as it had been then.
The police spoke to him, the defense investigator spoke to him, and it matches exactly what he says now. He kept saying, "You can't forget that," and he clearly did not.
That Friday, the plumber told us, I was working on the air conditioning unit on the ceiling directly above where she was found. That's how I know the insulation wasn't there on Friday.
Friday afternoon, he leaves work. The insulation pile is not in the way of his, forklift scissor lift? His scissor lift. Because he was working on the pipes above that area. Monday morning, he gets in, and he's like, "Oh shit, my scissor lift can't go there because there's a pile of insulation there." It suddenly moved 4 feet over.
The crime scene photos match what the plumber told us. The pile of insulation and Renee's body hidden within lies below the air conditioning unit that the plumber would have been working on. The photos show the scissor lift parked a little off to the side. And it's clear that, with insulation placed where it is, the plumber would no longer be able to reach the pipes above it. Based on the photos and the plumber's statement, it appears someone laid Renee's body next to the existing pile of insulation and shoved scraps of it over on top of her, effectively moving the pile over by 4 or 5 feet. It's so significant that he is certain, 100% certain, no doubt, that the pile of insulation moved between Friday, end of work, and Monday morning. When we talked to the plumber, we told him that every other Home Depot employee had told investigators that the pile of scrap insulation had been sitting in the same place for at least a week, maybe 2. "That's bullshit," he said, nearly growling at us. "That pile moved."
This guy, the one guy who has reason to know, is certain it was not in that exact same spot. They dropped her body next to the pile of insulation and flopped the insulation over on top of her.
So it means she wasn't there for a week. It means she wasn't put there until sometime after the job site cleared on Friday. The plumber told detectives all of this. He told them this on Monday morning at the Home Depot, within hours of Renee's body being found. The crime scene was still intact. Investigators could have tried to corroborate what the plumber said and confirm precise details. But from what we can tell, that didn't happen. And it's a lot harder to try and confirm the plumber's story now, 23 years later.
I wish we could have recorded that. I think he was one of the most pivotal witnesses in this case we've spoken to so far.
It's funny how someone who has just like one snippet of information can be so important, right? Like one kind of throwaway line.
He should have been a key witness from the start. And instead, he was just ignored all around.
I told Jake about our conversation with the plumber and how tense and angry he'd been when he found out that we were questioning Jake's conviction.
I've been thinking a lot about that Home Depot worker you were telling me about.
Uh-huh.
And how he was upset, didn't want to talk about it. How he could think that I'm guilty. I don't understand.
I think for him, he had daughters of his own, he mentioned. So I think when he saw a teenage girl's body, he assumed instantly that the boyfriend must have killed her.
What the? That's every single person looks at it just like that.
Yeah.
Fuck the real evidence. Fuck the real evidence and everything. It's me. That's exactly why I'm sitting here 23 years later.
He literally didn't know the first thing about the case.
We told the plumber that, according to the state's case, Renee had to have been killed sometime before Friday afternoon. Probably on Wednesday or maybe Tuesday or Thursday, but definitely before Friday. I don't know where you're getting that story from, he told us. You're not getting that from the cops because that's not what happened. We told him that, yes, that was in fact what detectives had concluded. The plumber paused for a moment and then said, well, they got that part wrong then, because that girl's boyfriend didn't put her there until after Friday. I told Jake to ignore the plumber's certainty about his guilt, because that's not what matters here.
I know it's hard to hear, but what matters is what he remembers now is the same as what he remembered back then, and it's that Renee's body was not placed there until after Friday.
And they convicted me based on the story that her body was there Monday or Tuesday or something.
According to them, you could not have killed her after Wednesday, because after Wednesday you were with Jesse Howland, supposedly.
We know with near certainty that Renee's body was not placed in the Home Depot during the daytime. When it was daylight, there were always workers there, even on weekends. Multiple workers confirmed that on the Saturday and Sunday before Renee was found, they'd been on the job site. Which means the killer had to have taken Renee there sometime in the evening or at night, after the construction site had cleared out. And on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, Jake's whereabouts are well accounted for. He was playing pool at Bucktooth Billiards and skating around and drinking in Library Park and hanging out in Lodi. He was constantly with other teenagers. It doesn't seem like he was ever alone, and no one ever saw him with Renee. And besides, Jake had already reported Renee missing on Thursday. Why would he have done that if he and Renee were still together and nothing had happened to her? So the plumber may believe that Jake is guilty, but the plumber himself is proof that Jake is innocent, if what he remembers about the insulation pile is correct. So if the plumber is right, then Renee was put in the Home Depot sometime between Friday evening and Monday morning. Jake's alibi for part of that weekend, for Sunday evening and all day Monday when Renee was found, was his friend Robbie Mendoza.
How close were you and Robbie back then?
Oh, we were best friends. We did everything. We skated together. We did everything together. Yeah, I haven't heard from him in years.
Robbie Mendoza wasn't just Jake's best friend. He was also Ty Lopes' nephew. Robbie is the connection between Jake and Ty. And according to the state star witness, Josh Burrows, Robbie was there at the Home Depot when Jake and Ty killed Renee. At both trials, Robbie testified as a witness for the prosecution. Except it's unclear why Prosecutor Schultz called him to the stand at all, because Robbie was not asked about anything related to Renee's murder. He was asked about how he knows both Jake and Ty, and how on Sunday evening and Monday morning he'd been hanging out with Jake at his dad's place in Lodi. But that's pretty much it.
Early on in our investigation, we met with Ty's family. We spoke to Robbie's mom, his uncle Jared, and his cousin Mandy, Ty's daughter. Robbie had not joined us, but his family told us a little about him.
Yeah, but Rob is a very cool dude. I don't know how else to put it. Even when he's been drinking or anything, he's still kind of a level-headed guy. He's always been that way.
Did you know that Robbie Mendoza was also accused of being at the Home Depot party?
No, I didn't.
Oh, he was one of the ones at the party, according to the cops.
So that's news to you.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that his uncle and best friend were both arrested for Renee's murder, Robbie's mother doesn't recall him ever being concerned he might get tied up in the case too.
He didn't get the sense they were looking at him.
Not that I'm aware, and I'm his mom. And
do you think he would have told you?
Oh, absolutely.
Did Robert ever tell you anything about Jake, or if he thought what he thought had happened?
Nothing. He says, Mom, this is all bullshit.
As far as we can tell from the case files, Robbie's mother is correct about this. We're not sure if Robbie even knew that he was supposedly one of the people involved in Renee's murder. Detectives only spoke to him one time. A few days after Renee's body was found, Detective Tony Souza stopped by Robbie's house and talked to him for a few minutes, but that was it. From the case files we've seen, that's the last contact the police had with Robbie. They never tried to talk to him again. Not even after Josh Burrows told them Robbie was at the party with Jake and Ty.
That's what I don't get, though. Why wasn't Robbie one of the ones that got arrested?
I don't know.
But the thing I keep thinking about, if the state's theory was real, how is Robbie not part of it too? Like in what scenario is it Jake and Ty and Robbie's not part of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
No, not really.
Robbie's mother told us she'd speak to Robbie about what we were doing and encourage him to talk to us for the podcast.
Are you guys wanting to talk to Rob in any way?
Yeah, we would love to.
I will give him a call this evening. I'm Mom. I'll let me see what I can do. Because I've met you ladies now, you know. Dude, this is to help your uncle. Let's get his name cleared.
Robbie never did call us, though. Finally, we gave up on waiting to hear from him and decided to try to talk to him in person. By chance, on the day we swung by his house, Robbie was having a yard sale. So he was already standing outside and not surprised to see Susan and I walk up to talk to him. But once we introduced ourselves, the conversation had not lasted long. Okay, that was really upsetting and sad.
I don't get it.
He did not want to talk to us. He says that's long in the past. He has nothing to contribute.
He put it behind him.
Everything he knows is public record.
Tell that to Mantika police.
He said if they did it, then they should rot in hell. His uncle's already dead. If they didn't do it, then...
Sucks for them.
Sucks for them.
I've been wondering if he thinks they're guilty, and that's why he doesn't want anything to do with this.
He said something about, he said even if they're not guilty, they shouldn't have been up at that situation. Like, he believes they were at a party at Home Depot. Yeah. At a minimum, he believes they were. That's what it sounded like to me, but I don't know.
Told him that.
I want to put words in his mouth.
I think you're right, though. I asked him point blank, do you think they're guilty? And he said, I don't know. I don't know anything. I believed him when he said that.
Yeah.
God. And I wanted to ask him, isn't that super weird that your uncle and your best friend did a murder and you were unaware of any of it? They planned a murder together and they never mentioned anything to you?
Probably say yeah, because they knew I wouldn't take part. I mean, why would they mention it to him?
He must realize there's no scenario in which this shit occurred and he's not there with them. I don't think so anyway. From the cops' point of view, there's no way that happens.
We are striking out. We talked again to Mandy, Ty's daughter, and asked if she had any idea why Robbie didn't want to speak to us.
No, and I'm mad at my cousin because he won't talk to you guys. He said he doesn't want to be involved.
So well, he is involved because Josh Burrows made him involved.
Yeah, so I'm not even really talking to him right now. But
why do you think he doesn't want to be involved? What's your guess?
No, I would figure he would want to help his uncle.
We told Jake, too, about what happened when we tried to talk to Robbie.
He's not not trying to talk to you at all?
He said flat out he will not talk to us.
Why?
I don't know, and I really wonder.
He's not my friend anymore, or he doesn't... I don't understand.
When Jake found out that Robbie was refusing to talk to us, he got mad. Jake still thinks of Robbie as his best friend, and he couldn't understand why his friend wouldn't answer a few questions.
Because why, like recently with Robbie, why the hell is he acting all weird? Refusing to talk, just leave it alone, just leave it alone. What the hell is that? Motherfucker, I've been sitting here for almost 23 years for nothing. Just leave it alone? Motherfucker, leave it alone? Dude, how long do I gotta sit in here for nothing? What do you mean leave it alone? He was supposed to be my best friend? Fuck that dude, man. Now he's running through my head as a baby. He did some shit. I don't know. Fuck, man, leave it alone. I'm trying to figure out what really happened to her. She deserves that.
In the end, the mystery here, at least to me, is not why Robbie Mendoza doesn't want to talk to us. There could be 100 reasons why. To me, the mystery is why the detectives didn't want to talk to Robbie Mendoza. Their star witness told them that Robbie was there when his uncle and his best friend conspired together to kill Renee. It is impossible for the state's case to be true without Robbie knowing exactly what happened. If Ty and Jake did kill Renee, then Robbie watched them do it. But not only do the detectives not arrest Robbie, they never even question him about the Home Depot story. Nah, that ain't right. I'll give credit where it's due. These detectives were relentless in tracking down the teenagers they wanted to talk to. And for them to never even try to speak to Robbie doesn't make sense. Not unless something more is going on here that we don't know about. But if Robbie knows what's going on, well, he's not telling us. We'd have to look elsewhere for answers.
Our failure to talk to Robbie was disappointing. But there was no shortage of other leads for us to investigate in Manteca. So it was on to the next one.
All right. Well, we still have a few days left.
Yeah, we're winding down, though.
I know. It's frustrating.
Tomorrow maybe will be better.
I mean, okay, look, at the very least, we know tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. we've got some case files to look at that could have some answers. So.
One of the records we were hoping to look at had to do with Aaron Dew. That's Renee's friend, who told detectives that while driving back from a traffic hearing, he'd passed by Renee, who was walking down the street by herself. Of all the witnesses who said they saw Renee after Memorial Day, Aaron was the only one whose story seemed credible to us. We really believed he had seen Renee while driving back from the courthouse. And detectives testified that they'd pulled his court records and found his traffic hearing was on June 1st. That meant Aaron had seen Renee 3 days after Memorial Day, if those records were correct.
We got the paperwork, and it does in fact say this hearing happened on June 1st. But we noticed it had been crossed out over a previous time on the printout.
Yep, May 25th.
So the Thursday before. So this court hearing had initially been scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on Thursday, May 25th. And then at some point got rescheduled to June 1st at 3:30 p.m.
Aaron's actual traffic hearing was held on the afternoon of June 1st. But Aaron's first appearance in court to set the hearing date was on the morning of May 25th. The court staff we spoke to told us this was common. The day you first go to the courthouse is often not the date your actual hearing is held.
So, look at the paperwork, we see the June 1st date handwritten in, and the lady helping us look at the evidence says that, yeah, that happens all the time, they change court dates. What I think must have happened is that Aaron went in on May 25th in the morning. They had, scheduling issue. I said, no, come back next week. And it was driving back from the courthouse
that morning that he saw Renee.
Yep.
Thursday the 25th.
So before she went missing.
So it was the last time he saw her. But it wasn't after Memorial Day.
And that fits his memory. And it fits the paperwork.
Yep. Actually, it's really obvious, so why didn't anyone else figure that out?
Figuring out what happened with Aaron Dew was important. But in a way, we now knew even less than we had before. What had been our only credible sighting of Renee after Memorial Day was actually just a paperwork error. It was progress, I guess, but it didn't really feel like it.
Every investigation is filled with false starts, setbacks, and dead ends. That's just how things go. You gotta look in all the wrong places before you can find the right ones. So usually, the failures along the way aren't such a big deal. But on this particular trip to Manteca, it was starting to feel like one failure after another. And even our successes just left us more confused than before. Our trip wasn't quite over yet. We had a couple more days to turn things around, but we were already feeling a little defeated.
I gotta say, this is honestly really... We've not had a great trip. We've had some bad luck. I feel like if we'd done things just a bit differently, like if the timing had been a bit different, things could have really worked out, and just consistently, things haven't gone in our favor.
Yeah, I agree. It feels off. Maybe Mercury is in retrograde.
But I haven't told you the bad news.
Oh, no.
Our interview tomorrow canceled.
This was the moment that we found out Derek Collins' mother had canceled the interview we'd scheduled with her after our first interview had been cut short. We had some important questions for Derek's mother that we hadn't gotten a chance to ask her. And now we never would.
Well, damn. God, we're just hitting dead ends everywhere, aren't we?
Well, fuck. Part of our frustration was over who was refusing to talk to us. Susan and I kept being surprised by hostility from witnesses that we'd never anticipated might be unfriendly. So to me, these failures, so Robbie, Derek, these people who we want to talk to because they have information, my feeling is not that they don't want to talk because they're involved or they're guilty. The feeling I get is they're afraid we're trying to implicate them. Right? Like, if we're looking into Jake didn't do it, the question then is, well, then who did?
I can't
so
imagine.
So why are
Derek
they asking about Derek? And why are they asking, like, they're going to try to say, I was at the party.
I don't want to get
They're going to
that.
say we were at the party. They keep saying there was a party with 40 kids. And if we know Jake, they're going to say we were at the party, right? Maybe our approach needs to change. Maybe we need to start by saying, listen, we've been investigating. We don't think there was a party ever.
But I hate, putting that into people right away. That's, to me, that feels like tainting witnesses. To be upfront, by the way, there was not a party. I mean, it might help, but it's contaminating their memories before we even start talking to them. How do we get them to talk to us without contaminating whatever they know, without freaking them out? It's because we're so scary looking. That's definitely the problem.
Speak for yourself. We are pretty intimidating.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll just go have a good night and hang out with Donna and Amber.
At least they talk to us. We'd met with Renee's mother, Donna, on previous trips to Mantika. When she found out we were in town again, she invited us to come out with her friends to karaoke night. Renee's friends Lori and Amber would be there too. Renee's friends and family are the last people in Manteca we'd have expected to get a warm welcome from. But at this particular moment, it felt like they were the only ones in town who wanted to talk to us at all. It's like, we are looking into this.
We have questions. Things were
Jake
not done
says
right.
He's innocent. They're like, yeah, come hang out with us.
We're going to be at Strings tonight doing karaoke. Want to join?
And the people who
got nothing to do with
got nothing to do with it at all, except who could maybe tell us, yeah, we heard there was a party, or we saw Jake like, who could confirm or not confirm or anything, shut us down.
Like, doors in our face.
Like, how crazy is that? All right, let's go have a drink.
Let's go do some damn karaoke.
Let's see if this town can make a good Manhattan.
When you're investigating a case, especially one that's a couple decades old, hard work is important. But dumb luck is probably even more important. That was certainly true for this particular trip to Manteca. It was our last day in California, and we were heading out to talk to a witness we just met. We called Kevin to let him know.
Hey, what's up? We're driving out to meet a witness. I don't know. Where the hell are we? But she had us meet her in this place that's... We're probably not going to die, right, Jacinda?
I'm thinking it's 50-50.
Yeah. Hopefully she's not luring us out here to our deaths. I'm kidding. It's fine. Probably.
That's never a good thing when someone wants to meet at an undisclosed location.
Or it's a great thing.
So a couple days ago, we met someone, and so we kind of explained what we were doing, and her reaction was like she had seen a ghost. She just went blank.
It was kind of scary looking. Like, I thought she was mad that we were looking into this case.
One evening, after a long day, Jacinda and I had been out grabbing dinner somewhere and started chatting to a woman we met. She had asked why we were in town. "We're here looking into the Renee Ramos case," we told her. Until that moment, I don't think I'd truly understood the phrase that someone looks like they'd seen a ghost. But there's no other way I could describe her reaction. Eyes wide, face stony, staring right through us, like she was seeing a ghost from her past.
Did she tell you why she had that sort of...
She told us the guys in prison didn't do it. They shouldn't be there.
So she agreed to meet with us. She has information which she believes. She clearly believes.
She knows who killed Renee.
We asked the woman what she knew about the case. "Not here," she told us. "Not in public. Here's my number. Let's meet later." So there we were, driving out to meet a witness that had something to tell us. We just had no idea what. At her request, we're not going to use her real name, and we're going to use a voice filter.
We won't ask your name on the record, but do we have your permission to record?
Yeah. Okay. What name should we go by?
Kelly.
Kelly?
Kelly.
We asked Kelly why, despite her obvious concerns, she had decided to talk to us anyway.
Because I feel bad for the family. I really do.
I almost thought that you were angry that we would question the guys in prison, their guilt.
No.
And you're like...
I feel bad for the guy in prison because he's not guilty.
So it told you like they didn't do it.
Yeah, they didn't. But it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And I guess he couldn't prove that he didn't do it.
Kelly was right. It doesn't matter what you know. What matters is what you can prove. And that's why Kelly never came forward. She can't prove anything. She knows what she heard and saw, but she has proof of none of it. And all she really knows is the story she was told.
How'd you hear about it for the first time?
Well, actually, a person started telling me the story because of the group that Renee had gotten associated with just for that night.
Kelly told us the man's name. We're not going to use it here. We're just going to call him The Source. But The Source knew Kelly was connected to the group of people out of the sister's house on Pastana Avenue. And he started telling her about something they'd done.
And when he was telling me the story, I was like, I have no idea who this girl is you're talking about, but I heard about the Home Depot thing, right?
The Source told Kelly that Renee had been at the sister's house when she was killed. "Your friends were involved in her murder," he said. "And they still have Renee's backpack and shoes." Kelly had not believed him, not at all. Some of her friends were involved in the murder of the girl at the Home Depot? No way, not a chance. Kelly told The Source he was full of shit. "Fine," he said. "You don't believe me? Go ask them yourself. And ask them what happened to the shoes and the backpack." So Kelly did. She went to the house on Pastana Avenue, and she asked Jamie, the younger sister, about the story she'd just been told.
And so I went and asked her about it, and she shut down. Just shut down. And I asked her where a couple things were, and her quote to me was, barbecue pit. Burnt.
Jamie had not denied the story, which alarmed Kelly. If it wasn't true, why wasn't Jamie denying it? Then Kelly asked what had happened to the girl's shoes and backpack, and Jamie's response was brief. Burnt in the barbecue pit. That is why, for the past 23 years, Kelly has believed that Ty and Jake are innocent. She took what Jamie said that day as confirmation that Renee's disappearance and murder was somehow connected to the sister's house.
We have tried to contact Jamie, but haven't been able to reach her. But her sister Julie denied any involvement. All of this was hard for Kelly to talk about, for a lot of reasons. During our interview, she began crying and asked us to turn off our recorders. There was more that Kelly could tell us, but almost all of it was secondhand. Just talk she'd heard from other people. The only thing she really knew, the only thing she'd seen and heard with her own eyes and ears, is what Jamie had said when Kelly confronted her. But Kelly did not quiz Jamie about specifics or get much in the way of details. Because once Jamie seemingly confirmed the story from the source, and also claimed that Renee's shoes and backpack had been burned, Kelly had, by her own admission, kind of lost it. She began screaming at Jamie before finally storming off. Kelly never spoke to her again. She wanted nothing to do with someone who'd been involved with what had happened to that girl at the Home Depot.
On our way back to Manteca, we updated Kevin on what Kelly had told us.
Well, you guys both have bullshit meters, and what did you think?
I believe her.
I believe she believes it.
Yeah.
I believe she 100% believes this. Whether or not what she was told is bullshit is the question I have.
I fully believe her story. This is what she knows and what she experienced and what she believes. Whether it's true, I'm still much more cautious. But yeah.
Yeah. She's not bullshitting us, in other words. She believes this.
Right. She believes she's been told this. She completely believes what she's been told. The question is just,
I believe she confronted her and they got in a fight. You know, whether she said that as a joke or I don't know, but I believe what she's recounting to us.
Kelly also hadn't known the whole story. What she knew, or what she thought she knew, was just a piece of it. And one of the things Kelly herself was confused about was how Renee would have ended up at the sister's house in the first place. Because Kelly was over at the sister's house all the time. She'd never heard of Renee. Renee was not someone who'd been hanging out there on a regular basis, or Kelly would have at least known of her. She feels sure of that.
Did Renee know these people?
No, that's what we can't figure out.
Because how would she end up in that if she didn't know that? Right?
I mean, maybe she thought they were just going to hang out and came to the house to hang. I don't know. That's the part we'd have to figure out.
There's another complication with Kelly's story, too. Most of the people involved, she told us, had probably been high as hell whenever whatever had happened had taken place. And many of the people that Kelly had heard things from had also been high when they told her about it, which always complicates matters. It raises serious questions of reliability. Were these people telling Kelly these things because they were the truth? Or was this all just drug-fueled conspiracy talk?
Yeah, unless they were just high out of their minds, it sounds like they were, what did she say, burning balls?
That was not a phrase I'd heard before.
You know, it's funny sometimes when, like, Jacinda's naivete sort of creeps in and she doesn't know.
I think it was burning balls. I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. It turns out the expression is tripping balls, but that's not the point. The point is Kelly had no proof of what happened to Renee. She couldn't give us that. All she could do was tell us the parts of the story that she knew. and that gave us a good place to start.
Well, if this is what happened, then there are a lot of people who have information about it. So, theoretically, it's something that could be confirmed.
Right, and see what other sort of information you can get to support this theory.
What Kelly described to us was not some kind of closely guarded secret. It was something the people involved had tried to keep secret, but there were too many people who had known something about it for that secrecy to have lasted. If what Kelly said was true, then there have to be quite a few people out there who'd heard something about it. We just had to find them.
That would have to wait for our next trip to Manteca, though. Next week, in episode 12, we take a detour to find a witness who now lives outside of California. A witness we were confident would speak to us. Getting him to talk has never been a problem before. The problem is once he starts talking, you never know what he's going to say. It was time for us to hear from Josh Burrows. You've been listening to Proof, a podcast by Red Marble Media in association with Glassbox Media. We'll be back next week with episode 12. Send us your questions and comments at proofcrimepod@gmail.com. We'll respond during our bonus episodes, Proof Sidebar, on Thursdays. Kevin Fitzpatrick is our executive producer. Our webmaster is Clayton Brawley. And our theme music is by Ramiro Marquez. Audio production for this episode is by George Panos, Michael Ulatowski, and Steve Rentos. Our archivist is Amory Davis. Our social media manager is Skylar Park. And thank you to our sponsors who make this podcast possible. Check out the show notes for special sponsor deals. And follow us everywhere with the handle @ProofCrimePod and on our website, proofcrimepod.com.
And lastly, a note to our listeners. If you have any information related to this case, we'd love to speak to you, no matter how small a detail it may seem. It just might be more important than you realize. You can reach us by email or leave us a voicemail at 929-267-3172.
That's all for this week. Thanks so much for listening.
We need top-tier nurses to improve our healthcare and patient outcomes. And to be a top-tier nurse, it takes a top-tier education, like the one you'll receive at the University of Maryland School of Nursing. We have a mission here to shape the profession of nursing. That means we do more than teach. Our community is one of collaboration, and our locations in Baltimore and Rockville feature cutting-edge facilities, research opportunities, and a commitment to creating a diverse nursing force. A workforce that's embedded in its community, locally, nationally, and globally. We offer competitive in-state tuition and find clinical and practicum placements for you to help you launch or advance your nursing career. To learn more about what we offer, go to nursing.umaryland.edu. That's nursing.umaryland.edu. Become a Maryland nurse at the University of Maryland School of Nursing.